I want you to start by picturing something in your mind's eye. Imagine an ancient stone calendar.
Oh, yeah.
You probably know the exact ones I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
The famous Mayan or Aztec carvings. Massive circular stones weighing tons, covered in these incredibly intricate, weather-beaten symbols.
Right, the ones that look like they belong in the middle of a dense jungle ruin.
Yeah, or sitting behind thick glass in a museum somewhere.
Exactly. And when most of us look at those artifacts, our minds immediately jump to a very specific set of assumptions.
We really do.
We think of mystical prophecies or ancient sacrificial rituals,
Mhm.
or maybe at best we assume it's just a highly decorated agricultural almanac.
Like something to tell them when the rainy season is coming so they can plant their corn.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
that's what I used to think. I mean, we have this deep-seated modern bias. We look at those carvings and picture these mystical, almost primitive countdowns.
Right.
I mean, remember the whole 2012 doomsday craze?
Oh, how could I forget?
We just assumed they were counting down to the end of the world. But what if we've been looking at these artifacts completely upside down?
That's the real question.
What if those stones aren't just counting days at all? What if they are actually highly advanced, three-dimensional astronomy manuals?
Well, it requires a massive paradigm shift. You have to go from seeing these ancient cultures purely as myth makers or, primitive farmers to recognizing them as rigorous, highly sophisticated scientists.
Scientists who understood orbital mechanics.
Exactly, in a way that honestly rivals our own.
And that is exactly our mission today. We are going on a deep dive into an incredible body of work by researcher Joanna Bernay. She spent 20 years, 2 full decades, tracking this.
That's a massive amount of time.
Right, 2 decades studying the Mayan and Aztec calendars. And the sources we're looking at focus specifically on 2 of them, the Hab and the Sulcan.
Which are fascinating on their own.
Now, just to set the table, the Hab was their 365-day solar calendar, and the Sulcan was a 260-day calendar. Bernay's findings on how these 2 systems interact completely reframe how we need to think about the universe.
It really does.
We are going to move away from the abstract, almost unapproachable math of modern astronomy and step into a tangible geometric science. Because these ancient civilizations didn't just measure space and time.
Yeah, they did.
They saw it as a living, breathing fabric that was actively being woven by the planets.
Which is such a compelling idea, but we need to remember it is also a highly technical concept.
Right.
Bernay spent those 20 years essentially staring at an immensity of numbers. We are talking about vast numerical series generated by the interlocking of these calendars.
Like gears within gears.
Exactly. Gears within gears that just kept repeating at a dizzying rate. She was trying to decode the underlying architecture of those numbers. And what emerged wasn't a book of spells.
Not at all.
No, it was a meticulously detailed system of celestial mechanics.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how these ancient cultures viewed the universe, we first have to understand the specific tool they used to measure it.
Right, the foundation.
Yeah, the sources call Bernay's decoded system the 1440-minute matrix.
Yes, the 1440-minute matrix is the foundational tool. It is the grid upon which their entire understanding of the cosmos was built.
Now, when I first read about this matrix in the research, I tried to picture something familiar. It's a circular reference system. So initially, I compared it to a modern clock face,
Sure, that makes sense.
or maybe the astrological zodiac.
Yeah.
But reading further, it's like way more versatile than that. Unlike a zodiac, there are no arbitrary signs here. No Aries, no Taurus.
None of that.
And there are no abstract degrees either. There are only minutes of time and angular minutes of space. Just 1,440 of them making up this perfect boundary.
And that number, 1440, is the key to the entire system.
Why 1440, though?
Well, it is the exact number of minutes in a single solar day. 24 hours multiplied by 60 minutes equals 1,440 minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that circle represents one full 360-degree rotation of the Earth relative to the Sun.
Which makes total sense. But this is where the sources started to lose me a bit. They claim this matrix is three-dimensional.
Yes.
How can a flat circle with 1,440 tick marks on it be a three-dimensional mapping tool? I mean, a circle is, by definition, two-dimensional.
That is the exact hurdle most modern thinkers hit when looking at this. To understand how it's three-dimensional, you have to look at how they plotted the coordinates.
Okay.
In this ancestral science, they weren't just drawing a flat map of the sky, they were tracking 2 coordinates of space and 1 coordinate of time simultaneously.
Okay, walk me through that. How does the single tick mark on a circle represent both space and time.
Think about what a minute actually is. For us, a minute is just a ticking hand on a watch. It's pure time.
Right.
But for an ancient astronomer standing on the Earth watching the sky, time passing means the sky is physically moving. As 1 minute of time passes, the stars and planets shift by a specific, measurable, angular distance across the sky.
So they're locked together.
Time and space are completely locked together. So on this matrix, 1,440 minutes of time perfectly corresponds to 1,440 angular minutes of spatial movement.
Oh, I see.
They took the immense scale of the cosmos and they mapped it proportionally to the human scale, using the daily rotation of our own planet.
So by tracking the passage of time in their daily lives, they were inherently tracking the physical movement of the cosmos.
Precisely. Unlike modern astronomy, which relies on incredibly abstract algebraic formulas that, let's be honest, most people can't even begin to wrap their heads around.
Yeah, definitely not me.
Right.
Right.
But this ancestral science used whole rational numbers, integer values based on something you can physically experience a day.
You didn't need a supercomputer.
Exactly. You didn't need a supercomputer to calculate the orbits of the planets. You just needed to deeply understand the mechanics of your own day.
But wait, if this matrix only have 1,340 minutes, it's essentially a closed loop, right? A perfect
Yeah.
circle. But if the planets are constantly moving, how do they track time and space moving forward without just drawing the exact same circle over and over again?
Wow.
That's where the idea of the weave comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because they aren't just plotting a static map. The sources talk extensively about how this matrix measures space-time.
They do, and this is where the paradigm shift really happens.
I really have to push back on this, though. When I read space-time in the notes, I immediately thought of Albert Einstein.
Naturally.
How could ancient pre-Christian cultures possibly have a concept of space-time? Isn't that something Einstein conceptualized in the early 20th century with the theory of relativity?
It sounds like an anachronism.
Yeah, are we just projecting modern physics onto old rocks?
What's fascinating here is that the concept of space-time isn't exclusive to modern physics at all.
Wait, really?
No, but the perspective on it is entirely different. Let's look at Einstein's modern spacetime. It is four-dimensional. You have three spatial dimensions, length, width, and height, usually measured in something like meters plus one distinct dimension of time, measured in seconds.
Right, the classic 4D model.
And in modern physics, that four-dimensional grid is treated as a sort of invisible structure that gets curved or warped by the gravity of heavy masses.
Like stars or black holes.
Yes. Furthermore, modern astronomy relies heavily on what's called the ecliptic model.
The ecliptic model, what is that exactly?
The ecliptic is basically an imaginary, flat, two-dimensional plane that extends out from the sun's equator. Modern astronomers use this imaginary flat sheet as a baseline to measure where all the planets are.
Okay.
It makes the math easier, but it's highly abstract. It's described by complex field equations, and we usually observe it by looking out at a universe that is very distant from us.
It feels cold, like we were just sitting on a rock staring at a distant mathematical grid.
It does. But the ancestral view of space-time is completely different. First, as we established, it is three-dimensional, not four.
Right, two of space, one of time.
Yes, all measured simultaneously on that circular 1440 matrix. And second, they didn't see space-time as an empty, distant vacuum waiting to be warped by a heavy star.
Or flatten it into that imaginary ecliptic plane.
Exactly. They described space-time as a trauma.
Trauma. The translation in the note says that means a weave, a web, or a lattice.
Exactly. A living, moving, structural lattice. For the ancients, space-time wasn't distant. It was being physically woven in the here and now by the continuous overlapping orbits of the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun.
So instead of a heavy bowling ball sitting on a trampoline, which is, the standard textbook analogy we always hear for Einstein's gravity.
Right, the trampoline.
Use more like a sparograph, those drawing toys with the interlocking plastic gears.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
You put your pen in the gear, spin it around the boundary, and it weaves these incredibly complex, overlapping geometric patterns.
A spirograph is a great starting point, but let's refine that analogy because a spirograph just draws flat lines on a piece of paper.
Good point.
This ancestral concept is a three-dimensional spirograph. Imagine those interlocking gears are the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun.
Okay.
And as they spin and orbit, they aren't just leaving an imaginary trail. The math suggests they are generating a physical structural lattice.
Oh, wow.
The patterns they weave with their orbits, their alignments, their crossings, that is the space-time fabric of our specific neighborhood in the universe.
And the sources go even deeper into what this fabric actually does. It wasn't just tracking rocks in space to them. This woven space-time acted as a literal womb.
Yes, a generative force.
The research suggests that this structural weave generated the physical form of matter on Earth and also the psychic, emotional, and spiritual life of nature.
It's all connected.
Yeah, the physical and the spiritual aren't separate categories. They are woven from the exact same orbital threads.
Which is a profound realization about how they viewed existence. In the modern world, we compartmentalize.
We totally do.
We separate physics from consciousness. We put astronomy in one university building and philosophy or biology in another.
Yeah, completely siloed.
But the ancestral science observed all natural systems in an integrated way. Life, matter, spirit, earth, and sky, they all exist within and are produced by this single, beautifully articulated lattice of space-time.
Okay, but if this lattice is constantly being woven, how exactly do the planets move to weave it?
Ah, that's the mechanics of it.
Right, because if a planet's just going in a perfectly round, simple circle, you're not going to get a complex lattice. You're just going to get a single boring ring.
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Joanna Bernay's research points to a very specific, highly revealing detail from the archaeological record.
The drawing.
Yes, there is an ancient Mayan drawing that depicts two men. They are pointing at each other, and each one is holding the opposite end of a single piece of rope.
It's a very striking visual representation of what is actually a deeply complex astronomical concept.
When I read about that drawing, it finally clicks for me. It's like they're maintaining perfect tension on a tightrope. They're pulling against each other. If the guy on the left lets go, the rope snaps back. If the guy on the right pulls too hard, the whole system collapses.
That tension is the core of how the ancients understood celestial mechanics. Because you're right, planets do not move in perfect, closed, linear circles.
No.
If they did, their orbits would eventually degrade. They'd either crash into the sun or drift away into deep space.
Right, so what do?
Instead, they travel in what this ancestral astronomy calls orbital spirals. They are on a continuous evolutionary path, moving forward while also drifting slightly laterally.
So to weave the web, they have to spiral. But wait, if a planet is spiraling, how do you keep it from just flying off into the void? How does the rope not snap?
By maintaining that exact tightrope tension you mentioned, and this was tracked directly on the 1440-minute matrix using two opposing forces simultaneously.
Okay.
The first is what they called the solar movement.
That would be the guy on the left side of the rope pulling forward.
Right. On the circular matrix, the solar movement is observed clockwise. It represents the fixed forward orbital cycle of the planet around the sun.
The primary driver.
It's the primary driver of the orbit. But to keep the planet from deorbiting because of the sheer velocity and momentum, there has to be a compensating force.
The guy on the right side of the rope pulling back.
Exactly. This opposing force is the sidereal movement. And on the matrix, this is plotted counterclockwise.
Counterclockwise, okay.
This complementary opposing force is something we, in modern terms, would relate to precession.
Hold up, precession. You're losing me a bit there. What exactly is precession in this context?
Think of a spinning top. When you first spin it, it stands perfectly straight. But as it spins, the top itself starts to wobble slowly in a circle, right?
Oh yeah, the wobble.
The Earth does the exact same thing. As it spins on its axis and orbits the sun, the Earth's axis itself slowly wobbles. That wobble takes thousands of years to complete one full rotation.
That is precession.
Yes, it constantly, subtly shifts our orientation to the stars.
So they are actively tracking the forward momentum of the orbit, the solar movement, against the backward wobble of the Earth, the sidereal movement.
Yes, one moving clockwise, one moving counterclockwise.
And this brings us back to the 3D aspect of the matrix. They are tracking these two opposing spatial forces against the single coordinate of time passing.
Exactly. It is the simultaneous interaction of these opposing forces. The solar pulling forward, the sidereal pulling back that creates the tension on the rope.
Wow.
That tension keeps the planets perfectly balanced in their evolutionary spirals, allowing them to weave the harmonic geometric patterns of space-time as they go.
I have to admit, that is mind-blowing. But I also have to be the skeptic here.
Sure, go for it.
Are you telling me that ancient cultures, standing in a jungle without telescopes, without lasers or supercomputers, were actively tracking and calculating gravitational tension and axial precession?
It sounds impossible.
I mean, is it possible this is just lucky math that happens to line up with modern physics?
This raises an important question about how we define scientific observation. It wasn't lucky math, it was the result of incredibly long-term, multi-generational observation.
Because they were doing it for centuries.
Exactly. And when you use integer math, whole numbers grounded in the observable reality of a 1440-minute day patterns emerge that are actually obscured when you use abstract modern decimals.
That makes a lot of sense.
By observing the sky relentlessly, day after day, year after year, and recording it on these interlocking gears of the Hab and Sulkin, the tension of those spirals became mathematically undeniable to them.
It was proven by their own data.
Right. Bernays' research even suggests that because our modern ecliptic model flattens the solar system to make the math easier, our understanding might actually be incomplete compared to this 3D tension-based ancestral method.
That's a huge claim. So what does this all mean? We've got 1,440-minute matrices, we've got a 3D space-time woven like a cosmic spirograph, and we've got planetary tightropes keeping us from spinning into oblivion.
It is an incredible feat of ancient science.
But how does knowing about orbital spirals and ancestral math actually change how we view our own lives today?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it all comes down to a philosophical shift grounded directly in their math.
Okay.
It's a concept that was absolutely foundational to these ancient cultures. The complete cycle, or what they considered the sacred unit.
The sacred unit. Explain that.
Look at how we operate in the modern world. We are obsessed with straight lines. We view time as a linear progression, past, present, future, moving in a straight line.
Always moving forward.
Right. We view progress as a straight arrow moving up and to the right on a graph. Think about modern economics. The expectation is infinite straight line growth forever.
Right, which isn't sustainable.
But in ancestral science, driven by this matrix, the unit of measurement is never a straight line.
Because straight lines don't exist in orbital mechanics.
Exactly. Everything goes from zero, travels its path, and inevitably returns back to zero. A cycle.
A closed loop.
And to the Mayans and Aztecs, a complete cycle was indivisible. It was sacred. You couldn't just extract one piece of data from the whole and claim to understand the system.
So, to use the modern economics example, you can't just look at a company's profit in a single quarter, a straight line pointing up, and ignore the rest of the year.
Exactly.
Or ignore the environmental resources it depleted to get there. Because eventually, the cycle has to close.
That is a perfect translation of the concept. The 1440 matrix, the perfect circle, is the ultimate representation of that reality.
Wow.
Because everything is a cycle, the universe isn't just a series of isolated random events happening on a flat, ecliptic plane. It is, as the research describes it, systems upon systems that are intricately connected.
Systems upon systems.
A planet's orbit is a cycle, a season is a cycle, a human life is a cycle.
And they're all interlocking gears in the same massive three-dimensional lattice.
Yes, and the takeaway here isn't just some vague platitude about everything being connected. It is a hard mathematical reality that nothing in nature happens in a vacuum.
Right.
The tension that holds a planet in orbit is the same tension that balances an ecosystem. And nothing in your life happens in a vacuum either. Every action you take is a coordinate plotted on that matrix. You are participating in those systems upon systems.
It takes this massive, almost intimidating scale of cosmic astronomy and brings it right back down to the beating heart of what it means to be a human being on this planet. It demands accountability to the cycle.
It integrates us back into the universe as active participants, rather than leaving us as isolated observers looking at a cold, distant grid through a telescope.
We've covered some immense ground today. We started by looking at those ancient stone calendars, specifically the interlocking gears of the Hab and Sulkin, and peeled back the myth of primitive mysticism.
We really did.
We unpacked the mechanics of the 1440-minute matrix, a cosmic mapping tool built on the tangible reality of a single solar day.
We contrasted the abstract, flattened modern view of space-time with the ancestral view of a living 3D lattice, a weave generated in the here and now by the physical movements of the Earth, Moon, and Sun.
And we visualized that incredible spiral dance, the clockwise solar movement pulling forward against the counterclockwise sidereal wobble of precession.
Two men holding a cosmic rope perfectly tight.
Yeah, perfectly tight to keep the universe in balance. It really does change how you look up at the night sky. But, as we always aim to do on this deep dive, let's bring it all the way down to Earth.
Let's bring it back to zero.
Exactly. I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder as you go about the rest of your day. Think about your own day. You are given exactly 1,440 minutes every single time the sun rises. In our modern linear world, we tend to treat those minutes like a ticking countdown on a bomb time, constantly slipping away, rushing in a straight line toward the end of the day, trying to maximize productivity. But what if you looked at your day through the eyes of the ancestral astronomers? What if those 1,440 minutes aren't a countdown, but a complete sacred cycle? Every day, you have the chance to weave your own physical and mental reality into the larger three-dimensional fabric of the universe. How will you weave your 1,440 minutes today?